Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review the remake of Death Wish. So this man, played by Bruce Willis, there's a home invasion and his wife is killed and daughter left in a coma, and he becomes a vigilante trying to hunt them down and protect the streets of Chicago, while a whole bunch of newsreels keep telling us how bad Chicago is and this Grim Reaper, and is this a good thing, is this a bad thing. This is directed by gore porn horror filmmaker Eli Roth, or aka the Bear Jew from Inglorious Bastards. And I haven't seen any Eli Roth's films, nor did I have a whole lot of interest in seeing any of his films because of the kinds of films he tends to make. But my mom really wanted to see this, so I took my mom to go see Death Wish. And I always liked Bruce Willis for the most part. Unfortunately, recently he doesn't put in the most effort sometimes, and I'll talk about that in particular with this. But this film's getting a lot of hate, and people are saying this is like the worst film of the year, this is the worst film ever, poorly timed, which it came out 2 weeks after a mass shooting, which this film already got pushed back because of mass shootings. And I don't know, I don't feel like this film is like, people are saying this is the worst timed film ever. It's it's tough trying to make a judgment on that when it's like films are released in so much advance. And the thing is, films like this have been released for years and decades. This is literally a remake of another film, which I've not gotten to see the other Death Wish, the original with Charles Bronson. But I'm going to at least start off talking about the themes of this film, and I can tell why certain people really hate this film and why other people really love this film, because this really does paint a picture of why vigilante justice is important and works for the most part. And it does try to delve a bit into the toll that it takes, but I don't feel like this film ever really latches onto that and keeps going with it. So basically it's like, without giving anything away, it's like this film works out and that choice works. And it's interesting to see a film go that far with that. From what I can tell, the original film, from what I've heard of reviews, paints a very gray picture, and this is more just like, this was potentially the right thing to do. And you do get to see what it does to the main character, our doctor, played by Bruce Willis, and he goes interesting places. He goes from being a pacifist person who really sticks to the rules and the law, and goes and becomes this person. And then I don't know how well it was put together to the point where it really feels like he could just go back to his regular life, like that kind of thing. So I'm not sure about that. But the thing is, does the film say that he ever gets back to the person he used to be? And I don't want to get too much into spoilers, so I'm not going to answer that question. You're going to have to go see this film. But overall, so Eli Roth, I feel like, has a couple of issues with how he directs this film. There's some tonal issues. There's a running joke about gluten-free stuff, and it kind of feels forced. And the scenes where it feels, it kind of like lobs it up with like, oh, here comes comic relief kind of thing, and it's just like a little bit takes you out of the movie. And then there's a lack of sense to me where the time period that a lot of this takes place in, some of it feels very rushed, some of it feels dragged out. Because the thing is, this film is like an hour and 38 minutes, and it takes an hour and 47 minutes. It takes its time getting to the point where this call to action happens, and it takes a little while to actually get going. And I don't feel like Eli Roth does a great job of pulling this film together to the point where you really makes sense. And then the writing by Joe Carnahan, there's some interesting characters. It's pretty black and white in terms of thematics, which we talked a lot about at the beginning of this review already. And from a story standpoint, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing super interesting about it. Eli Roth's stamp definitely gets put on this because there's some extreme gore at certain points in this film, and it's just like, oh damn, it goes there. Just to warn you, this is hard R movie, and please expect to see some interesting prosthetics and some very interesting gore happening on in this film. This was also shot by Roger Stofers, and Stofers I feel like does a good job shooting this film. They build decent enough tension with how this is shot, which I feel like Roth could have done a better job of building some of the tension. Some of the sequences feel a little anticlimactic and kind of just like abrupt and cuts off the tension, but how this is shot, there's some great camera work at the very beginning with the opening sequence, and overall I think it's well shot. It's not super interesting, it's not something that it's going to grab your eye and be like, oh my god, the cinematography and that was gorgeous, but it's something that works pretty well, and they do a nice job framing of certain scenes and stuff like that. When there is action, you do get a sense of what's all going on, which is important to me if you've ever watched any of my reviews of action films. And this was also composed by Ludwig Göransson, and it does its job, the score of this film, and it's more for building up atmospheric situations instead of actually having like a composed score. It has like synths and stuff like that, and it does its job. I'm going to put it that way. It doesn't really elevate, but it fits what it's supposed to be doing, so I guess it did its job. Now the cast. Bruce Willis is very hit or miss in this film. There's some scenes where you could tell he's really putting it in, but there's other scenes where he's phoning it in, and there's some scenes where it's just like, there look like there's no effort put in there, and it kind of drops the ball in certain scenes. Vincent D'Onofrio is fantastic in this film. I love him as Bruce Willis's brother. He is one of the most interesting characters in the film, and he brings some comedy to the film, but in a very natural, organic way, instead of some of the shoehorned in, like, haha, joke moments throughout the film. Elizabeth Shue, I think, does a nice job. She doesn't get a whole lot to do, except for one sequence, which you could probably imagine, which that sequence, the home invasion sequence, was very tense, and you could really feel it, and that was probably one of the most satisfying scenes in the film from a tense thriller perspective. Is like that scene really worked for the most part. Camila Moran, who plays the daughter, apparently she's some kind of model. She does fine. She's fine. She doesn't get a whole lot of heavy lifting either, but there is, throughout the first part of this film, when they're just being a family and stuff, there's some very awkward, stilted acting going on, and it's just like, this feels really uncomfortable. And then Bruce Willis, as the movie goes on, gets a little more into it, and I feel like he's playing something he feels better at playing. And then Len Carew actually pops up for a small role in this film, and it's just like, you love seeing very talented veteran actors popping up and giving it for like a scene or two in a film that just kind of like elevates that sequence, and that's exactly what he does in this film. This film had a lot of potential, but it really doesn't go a whole lot places with it, and some of the too many detractions take this away from this just being a straight average film for me. So I enjoyed it for what it was, sitting through it, but I'm going to give Death Wish a C-.